we are expecting to have a wonderful, wonderful conversation around the theme skilling young women, bridging gender gaps for employability and entrepreneurship. My name is Terry-Ann Chebet, and I will be sort of moderating the conversations and facilitating as we listen to our distinguished panelists who are joining us this afternoon. For those of you who are joining us, thank you so much. On the chat, please tell us where you're joining us from. Also, let us know what are some of the things or the issues that you'd like us to touch on. If you do have any questions or comments, I would be keen to read that from you as well. Just some housekeeping rules for our speakers as we begin so that we can keep time. I'd like to request to keep our presentations to a maximum of 8 minutes. At the 10-minute mark, I will come in and say goodbye so we can invite some of our other panelists to come to enable us to have a vibrant and engaging conversation, and also to be able to give time to everyone else to be able to join us. And as we know, this is a conversation that is absolutely timely. There's so many people hoping to get into the employment space, but just that transition has been difficult. And these are some of the issues that we will be touching on today. Some housekeeping. As you can see on the screen there, please remain muted unless you're presenting or making a contribution. Feel free to also raise your hand using the tab at the bottom, and I'll be able to see it. And one of my co-moderators in the background will also be able to see it. Do remember to introduce yourself in the chat box. We'd like to know who you are. Send in questions via the Q&A chat box anytime during the session. You don't have to wait until the end. Please feel free to do so, and the presenters will be able to answer in between the webinar. As you may have noticed, the meeting is being recorded, and I believe it is important for us to share that information with you. So we'll start off now. We've got about an hour and a half, maybe slightly over, maybe to an hour, 45 minutes to have this engaging conversation. Remember, this is the skill set development for young women, bridging gender gaps on employability and entrepreneurship. And we will quickly start off. I want us to quickly get into the program so that we can have as much as possible, and that we can also experience and listen to our panelists. And our first speaker for today will be Alex Dai. Alex is the development manager at Kidogo, and she will be giving us her thoughts on and what Kidogo is doing as well within the space. I'll just give you a brief introduction. Alex is Kidogo's grant and development manager. She oversees Kidogo's fundraising arm and supports advocacy and systems work change. She has over 10 years international experience, and prior to Kidogo, she worked as a business sustainability consultant in China and an operations manager for a WEE social enterprise in Peru. Alex is an experienced facilitator who's passionate about the intersection of gender equality and early childhood education. Alex, over to you to kick us off.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Terry-Ann. I'm excited to chat with you all today. And good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are. Let's go to the next slide. Perfect. So for those of you who are not familiar, at Kidogo, we are a not-for-profit social enterprise that aims to improve access to quality, affordable early childhood care and education in Kenya. And back in 2021, we launched an initial pilot to expand our model to vocational training centers in Kisumu, providing childcare so young mothers can receive an uninterrupted education. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, vocational training centers are a place where youth can receive upskilling in skills, anything from hairdressing to other skills to improve their economic circumstances. So when we set out to do this project, we had a few objectives. First was to reduce the childcare barriers for enrollment of young mothers, to really give them an opportunity to access opportunities for economic empowerment. Secondary, try to break the cycle of poverty for young mothers through allowing them to obtain an economic empowerment through acquiring a technical skill set. And three, break the generational poverty cycle in the future by stimulating children in their first 1,000 days of growth and development, which are so important, through holistic approach to play-based quality childcare. Next. So why was this a problem? Why did Kidogo decide to expand our model to the VTCs in Kisumu? As with many other countries in the world with COVID-19 lockdowns and government containment measures, there was a huge increase in youth pregnancies. In the case of Kenya, it was an estimated 11% increase. And these young mothers oftentimes were given the opportunity to attend a VTC, but with no childcare options, they have two choices. First, they can bring their child to school with them, which I'm sure as parents can attest to having children at home during a pandemic. It's tough to learn or work when there's a little one beside you and you're concerned about the little one's well-being, which of course led to classroom distractions and increased dropouts. Or they could leave their child in an unsafe daycare environment if they even had access to such a daycare, which could potentially hinder the young child's development. So Kidogo signed an MOU with government of Kisumu County to have an additional pilot in 3 VTCs. There are 26 in Kisumu and 134 nationwide. So during this initial 6-month period, we completed center renovations and we hired and trained caregivers. In this pilot, we had 60 children and young mothers from 1825, with children being from 7 weeks to 3 years old. And at the end of Q4, we handed over operations to the VTC. Next. So if we're looking at the baseline, where do we start? Here's our why, really. If we're looking at the majority of respondents, 80% of young mothers mentioned they were not aware of any childcare options near them. And 90% of students reported that they carried their children to class. According to VTC managers, 66%, so that's 2/3 of young mothers dropped out of school between 2019 and early 2020. 2/3 of young mothers dropping out. And 30% of student mothers said that they'd considered dropping out of school because they didn't have childcare. Now, and just also looking at, through interviews, the feelings of shame and embarrassment as a young mother, not being able to participate in class and feeling embarrassed that you have to take a break to breastfeed your baby behind a building were also key points of interest during our baseline. However, at the end line, over 95% of student mothers had enrolled in the center. And not only had student mothers enrolled, it was also a driving force between new students actually choosing to attend the particular VTCs. And they had reported a 33 to 50% increase, depending on the pilot center, in actual enrollment of young mothers. And as a result, all 3 centers have reported that they've not experienced any dropouts among young mothers. And in fact, they've noticed higher attendance, improved performance, and a decrease in shame and embarrassment among young mothers. Talking to young mothers, there were feelings of being able to focus in class. VTC managers noticed that young mothers were not just performing well, they were outperforming their classmates once this pilot was initiated. As well, young mothers just mentioning that they can actually be a student rather than having to be a mom and a student at the same time while they're looking after their little one. Next slide, please. So when we're going back and reflecting on initial lessons learned through this pilot, it's one of the most important is that providing childcare at VTCs can increase enrollment, improve performance, decrease absences, decrease dropouts, leading to a higher rate of program completion. So these VTC pilot can actually improve program completion, allowing mothers to have a better start to economic potential. As well, providing childcare ensures young children receive quality play-based Kidogo education during their first 1,000 days, leading to not only positive physical and cognitive outcomes. And if we're thinking strategically and interestingly about policy and practice, this VTC could serve as a huge building block to build further evidence that childcare is a precursor to women's economic empowerment. What does that mean? Without childcare, it is very difficult for women to be empowered economically, for women to work, and because they're worried about their child, they're unable to focus entirely on their work or school because they do not have access to childcare. So it is so essential to have childcare as a precursor to women's economic empowerment. As well, the power of childcare in freeing up women's time and potential to succeed economically. And this is really going to hopefully serve as a building block of research to support national economic prosperity and encourage governments to learn from this and create childcare policies and subsidies. Thank you very much, everyone. I know I finished a couple minutes early, so if anyone has any questions or is interested in discussing this further, potentially working together, I believe our email will be shared in the research brief. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex. I mean, as a mom myself, just listening to some of that data that you're sharing, it's really is unfortunate. And a line that has stuck with me from your presentation is that the power of childcare in freeing up women's time and potential to succeed economically is, cannot be understated. So, as we continue to have these conversations, that is something that we cannot, put away, because if a woman is unable to get somebody to assist with her childcare, then she's unable to even get any form of, financial stability or be able to get some sort of income. Before we get into our next speaker, just a bit of thoughts around our conversation today. The full participation of women in the workforce has been shown to be critical for economic growth and development, and we can pick that up from Alex's presentation as well. Women face significant barriers to labor force participation and entrepreneurship opportunities. Research has pointed to social, economic, and policy-related factors that propagate women's suboptimal participation in labor force and economic development, and we can pull that some of the issues that have been raised by Alex as we kicked off. Such factors include educational attainment, skill set competencies, policy and legal frameworks, and social growing evidence shows that investment in skill set development is an urgent and effective means to achieve progress on gender equality, decent work, and inclusive economic growth. Now, our next speaker sits at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and I have seen a lot that has been done by Kenya Association of Manufacturers, specifically to support women, when it comes to capacity building, exposure to markets, and so much more, just to ensure that women who maybe were not entrepreneurs to start with now have that skill, to ensure that they have the confidence to run their businesses with confidence. So I'd like to invite Sally Kahyu. I'll introduce her just before she kicks off. Sally is the head of corporate communications and marketing at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, that's CAM. Sally is a storyteller. She's a strategic communications guru. She's a brand development expert and a sustainability champion. She has over 15 years experience in creating impactful narratives, developing and elevating brands, advocacy, communications, building sustainability strategies, and stakeholder relationship management. Sally, karibu sana. It's lovely to see you.
Hi, Terianne. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm really happy to be joining this wonderful conversation. I like what Alex has talked about, and I think we'll find areas of overlap between what we do and some of the interventions that she's trying to make with Kidogo. So I'll just introduce shortly Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We are the umbrella body for the manufacturing sector in Kenya. The association is 62 years old this year. And we work with different stakeholders to create a conducive environment for the manufacturing sector to be competitive and productive. And so I think I'll just jump straight into my presentation. So we can go to the first slide. So I think I prefer to start with an introduction on the fourth industrial revolution, because there has been a global conversation for the past 4 or 5 years now as to where the manufacturing sector is heading, but also as a reflection of how much participation there has been, especially with women, in other forms of industrial revolution. So there's obviously the fear that the fourth industrial revolution comes to take away jobs because of the issue of automation, the Internet of Things, but there's also a positivity about it. There's a positive way that we can get ahead of the curve and begin to create spaces and create ways in which more participation of people in the manufacturing sector can be realized. So the Industrial Revolution has redefined work and skills, especially within the context of manufacturing, with a good number of promising future jobs, and it heavily relies on STEAM, that is the sciences, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. But what we continue to see, even as the association and even as we continue to work with other stakeholders in skills development, is that we have a thin inferno, or funnel for women who are in school. So if you look at the women or the girls who leave primary school to join secondary school to do STEAM related subjects, you have the funnel continues to thin. If you look at the girls that are going from secondary school to tertiary institutions, especially the technical and vocational education and training institutions, you see that they continue to be less and less and less, and even less going into industries after the tertiary institution. So this is something that we continue to see, that there's low transition of graduates, especially female graduates, into industry. And there's a lot of factors that contribute to this. So we can go to the next slide. So in the year 2020, the Association of Manufacturers, so let me just take a step back. In 2017, the association had the first female chair in 57 years. And we, as the association, also just took a step back and thought of what that meant in terms of the representation of women in such a critical sector in Kenya's development. And so we then launched the Women in Manufacturing program in 2017, and we began to interact with different stakeholders, some of whom expressed the fact that there was no data to use for women in manufacturing through which they can support the work that we were championing. And so in 2019, we partnered with ICRW, who are our gracious hosts today, and we came up with the first ever Women in Manufacturing report in Kenya and East Africa. And according to this report, we can see that 11% of women complete STEAM higher education courses compared to 21% of men. So that also speaks to my earlier, demonstration. Also that women's attainment of training in areas such as engineering, manufacturing, or construction is extremely low at 2% compared to that of men at 6%. We can move to the next slide. So in skills development, as I said, we've worked with very many partners, and GIZ has been our critical partner in terms of skills development. If you know GIZ, you know that they've done a lot of work in this country in terms of skills development under the E4D program. To promote youth development through skills development and local enterprise development as well. So CAM continues to drive this conversation, especially in terms of indicating to women that the manufacturing sector is actually open to them through the Women in Manufacturing program. So we go out and we support girls and young women to venture into the manufacturing sector, but we also support these stakeholders to begin to look at creating skills development programs, at developing progressive curricula in school with a gender lens in focus, so that we can continue to attract more women to go, for example, into TVET institutions, which I think some women, some feedback that we've received is that some women get into TVET institutions, and then the first thing you're asked is, are you sure you really want to do welding? Why don't you just go and do dressmaking instead? So that pigeonholing and that sort of bias when it comes to gendered work, I think, can still be felt in some of our institutions. And so CAM is doing the work through the Women in Manufacturing program to remove these kinds of stereotypes and just to work with educators and other stakeholders to reduce unconscious bias around gendered work. So we can go to the other slide. So the impact of this program is that we've seen an increase uptake of internship by young people in various industries and including women, with some employed permanently with our membership across the country. We've also seen young graduates gain hands-on experience where they've acquired relevant competencies, and it's critical because the world is moving fast. So these competencies means also acquiring knowledge in new technologies that are being presented to them. So speaking to some different stakeholders, they say that yes, women and men are presented with the same sort of access, which is debatable, to technology, but how do we optimize this technology? You find that men can optimize technology more than women to, for example, make money in terms of skills. So we need to begin to consciously educate women and also not assume that the advantages or the accesses of technology are presented to us equally. We've also seen an increased uptake of STEAM courses by young women and an aspiration to get into manufacturing related jobs. We can go into the next slide. So we run a mentorship program for young women, as I've mentioned, and during those forums, we also look at knowledge and skills. We look at also issues of financing. So once we've equipped women with skills, young women with skills, and they want to go out there and begin an entrepreneurship venture, how do they optimize, how do they, what is the financial literacy that they're equipped with to run a successful business, especially from micro to small to medium and to large. So we provide these kinds of skills and these kinds of opportunities. Female graduates also receive mentorship from our members on personal branding, networking, productivity improvement, among others. And we've also seen increased enrollment and retention of young women in STEAM-related subjects at technical universities and institutions. We can go to the next slide. Yes. So just in conclusion, the Women in Manufacturing program continues to be supported by networks such as yourselves, such as ICRW, such as this community of practice that has been created. And we continue to rely on you to push this agenda, especially to get women to thrive in male-dominated sectors. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I appreciate the invite. Asante.
Thank you very much, Sally. I've heard a lot of course, about the Women in Manufacturing program. And I do know for the first time in many years, we're seeing locally made products not only being sold from people's homes or people's cars, but now in supermarkets, in stores, because of the capacity building and the support that they have received from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers through the WIM program. So thank you very much for your efforts in as much as that is concerned. I'd like us to get involved in what's happening on social media as well. For those who have not been able to join us this afternoon, please share your takeaway, share a picture also using the social media handles. ICRW Africa. The hashtag you can use is gender equality, skill development, and women in STEM or women in STEAM. And there's already some conversations that have begun taking place on the social media. Please feel free to retweet, tag somebody who would benefit from this conversation as well, because there's so much rich content that's coming out of our conversation this afternoon. I'd like to now welcome our next speaker for today, Mr. John Ochieng. He's a policy manager and innovations for Poverty Action, that's IPA Kenya. John Ochieng is a policy manager and is in charge of strengthening the interface between research evidence and policy processes. John is a public policy governance and advocacy specialist with several years of experience working in programs championing pro-poor policies and participatory governance. He has built experience implementing a governance and devolution support program, focusing on strengthening the governance systems of Kenya's counties by making them more competent, transparent, accountable, and of course, inclusive in their governance and service delivery. Mr. Ochieng, over to you.
Thanks, Terian, for such a glowing introduction. So without much ado, we'll move to my presentation, and I'll request participants and other members to pay more attention to the audio than the visual, which metamorphosed overnight. Briefly about IPA. IPA is Innovations for Poverty Action, and our vision is a world with less poverty. And how do we want to achieve this vision? So we do so by creating rigorous evidence on what works to end world's poverty. And we want to share this evidence with the people who listen, who care to listen to us, and that is policymakers, so that they're able to make evidence-based decision-making. And then we move further and build the capacity of policymakers to use evidence. So that's how IPA works. That is creation of evidence and moving the evidence to policy. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I want to make a presentation on a study that IPA conducted in Uganda, and that is related to this this event. So IPA partnered with Educate organization that was implementing a program, a 4-year program in Uganda. And the program was aimed at building the soft skills and entrepreneurial skills of youth in higher institutions of learning in Uganda. So that was way back in 2012 and 2013. So IPA partnered with Educate and also some researchers to measure some interventions around social entrepreneurship, mentorship, and student business development. And the policy issues that were IPA and Educate and these researchers were trying to address is the fact that youth, both in Uganda and Kenya, face several challenges in accessing decent employment. And even if they don't get employment, then they don't have, the entrepreneurial skills required to start their own businesses. So that was the policy issue issues to be solved. So the IPA used the randomized control trial to group the study respondents. And I talked about schools, secondary schools, and other institutions of higher learning. And the results were as follows. After the 4-year study, number one, that there was a huge impact on soft skills of the program on the graduates, and that the graduates were substantially more pro-social and demonstrated higher persuasion degree that would help them in doing business and also identifying business opportunities. The program had little impact on business knowledge of hard skills. Although the graduates demonstrated more knowledge about identifying opportunities for business. Another finding was that there were positive impacts on educational outcomes of this program, and this was especially on female participants in the study. Now, these findings were used in 2020 in a partnership between IPA and the National Council for Population and Development to actually review and inform the policy on population policy for national development. So that was the phase 1 of this study. Phase 2 of this study was responding to COVID-19, and this took place last year. So this was after IPA got some funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we went back and probably and studied the same respondents to see whether there was some resilience and improved ability to cope with the COVID mitigation measures that were effected in Uganda, which were also same as those in Kenya. So the findings of that study of phase 2 are not ready yet. So we will share them as soon as they are ready. So that's all that I had. Thank you, Terry. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ocheng, for your presentation. One second. Thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to once again request that you share some of what you're hearing this afternoon on social media. Remember to follow ICRW Africa. And if you do, you'll be able to retweet. You can also use the hashtags gender equality, skills development, and women in STEM. Remember, you can also tag at COP, that's COP_we. You can also tag Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And once you follow that, you'll be able to see which other handles you can use to follow the conversation as well. Please, let's also take this conversation online, so those who are not able to join today will be able to see that. All right, I'd like to now introduce our next speaker, and I see that we're doing very well on time this afternoon. So we will be able to have quite some ample time for our breakout sessions, which will happen at about 5 minutes past 4. And after that, come back to have some feedback at about 4:35. So we're doing pretty well on time. And I'd like to thank our panelists for ensuring that we're sticking within the designated period. So our next speaker is Mary Mwangi. Mary is a researcher and lecturer at the Kenyatta University in the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Biotechnology. She is also an active researcher and a dedicated STEM champion with a passion for empowerment of women and girls. At the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, funded KUB Hub, she's a collaborator on the project, the impact of apprenticeship, internship, and mentorship programs on employment of young women. She has won several other multidisciplinary research grants, including Nakosti Women in STI, National Research Fund Kenya, Lake Victoria Research Initiatives, among others. Ms. Mary Mwangi, over to you. Karibu sana. We're looking forward to hearing from you this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Terianne, and thank you, ICRW, for this opportunity. I would like to say at the onset that I am making this presentation on behalf of my colleagues at Kenyatta University. As you are all aware, Kenyatta University is currently undertaking 12 studies on what works for women's economic empowerment. And I am representing one of those studies whose title is Impact of Apprenticeship, Internship, and Mentorship, which we are abbreviating as AIM, programs on the employment of young women. And our goal is to evaluate the impact of these programs on enhancing work readiness for employability of young women. And when we talk about work readiness, we mean the possession of knowledge, skills, and in skills we include hard skills as well as soft skills, attitudes, and mindsets to perform certain jobs. And the rationale for this is the common feeling among employers that our graduates are half-baked, they are not ready for employment, and we're asking ourselves, how can we go beyond the classroom to enhance employability of especially young women? So our expected outcome is that we should increase the exposure of young women to these programs by 20% by the year 2025. Next slide, please. So the objectives are to assess the effect of the KIOP apprenticeship program. This is the KIOP apprenticeship program is the Kenya Youth Employment and Employment Project, which is funded by World Bank, which aims at training and on business skills and giving grants for young people to help them, go into self-employment or to gather employment. So that is our first objective. The second objective focuses. I'm hearing some. Okay, so the other objective is to determine the effect of STEM Kenya mentorship program on employment of young women. Now, the STEM Kenya mentorship program is a program that was launched by UNESCO in 2014 in collaboration with the National Council for Science and Technology and Innovation and the Ministry of Education, with the aim of offering mentorship to girls, high school girls, to encourage them to take STEM. As Sally already explained, there's still a representation of women in STEM, in the uptake of science subjects, and more so in the uptake of STEM careers. Then the other objective is to evaluate the impact of the public service internship policy on the employment of young women. Now, this is a policy by the government of Kenya under the Public Service Ministry, which governs the uptake of internships by young people, by young graduates. So we want to evaluate the impact of this policy on employment of young women. And depending on the evidence gathered from these studies, we hope that we can upscale the programs that work for women's economic empowerment, and especially in terms of school to work transition for young women. Next slide, please. So we are basing this on the fact, the disheartening fact that female participation in the Kenyan job market continues to be far below that of men. And this gender disparity, as I said, is more apparent in STEM-related fields at all levels. And so these programs, AIM programs, apprenticeship, internship, and mentorship are designed as interventions to enhance work readiness. However, we note that there is a low uptake of these programs by women, although they are there, and there's also limited empirical evidence on their effectiveness. So the programs are there, they are being launched, but what is the effectiveness? So we have taken a research, and this is a non-experimental study whereby we are collecting both qualitative and quantitative data. You are using stress studies to follow the beneficiaries of these programs. And so far, we have completed a pilot study, and the main study is ongoing. And during this pilot study, we go out and look for this, the beneficiaries of these programs, interview them. So we have 3 sets of questionnaires. We interview the beneficiaries, we interview their supervisors, we interview the policy implementers at different levels, and also policy makers at the headquarters. So for example, in this case, you can see a situation where the researchers went down to the coast. The STEM Kenya project was launched at the coast at Mamagina Girls. And so when we went there, we had an opportunity to interview the principal, the STEM teacher, and the students. We managed to get the students. These students are now in high school, but we were able to meet them and and ask them questions, interview them regarding the experience on the STEM program. Next slide. So some of our key findings, as I said from the pilot survey, is that there's a positive relationship between participating in the AIM programs and employability. This is coming out of the data that we are collecting. And just to emphasize, as shown in the graph, that beneficiaries of apprenticeship and mentorship programs had higher chances of getting employed than those who went through the internship programs. You can see internship, there's a 5% difference, but between, for apprenticeship, you can see between unemployed and employed, we have, almost 10 times from 19 to 81, and for mentorship, a 20% increase. The other finding that we have come across, or that we have found, is that the level of education and membership to a professional organization are significant determinants of employment. Some of these students belong to professional organizations, and we have seen through our study that those who have an interaction with the professionals who mentor them tend to, gain employment and progress in the career more readily than those who have not. And the students that have a bachelor's degree, certificate, and diploma are more likely to get employed than those having a secondary school certificate. I think, again, this is evidence-based. So membership to professional organizations enhances the chances of securing employment. And digging further, we found that this is because by interacting with professionals, the students, the young people, the young women are mentored, and so they gain confidence even to look for jobs or even in performance of the jobs. So some of the lessons learned so far from the pilot is that there is limited access to the programs, and this is a major drawback. In as much as we are hearing these programs as being very useful in enhancing employability, there's still limited access. And we also found some frustration among students who applied for the programs and they could not access them. And you find that they are undergoing serious psychosocial frustrations, which require support. So we are thinking that some of the recommendations is to ensure that as many students as possible can get the access to these programs, and this course may be for more structured and more enhanced industry linkages with the universities. And the students also feel that they need certificates to show that they have participated in the programs. And obviously, to trace these respondents has not been very easy, but we are now undertaking the larger project, and we hope that from the lessons learned from the pilot survey, we shall be able to reach out to more. And we are saying that at the end of the day, we feel that there is need for a STEM policy in Kenya. And I think I'll end there, and thank you very much.
Terry, you're muted.
Terry, you are muted.
Oh, my apologies for that. Thank you very much, Ms. Mwangi, for sharing your presentation. And we often hear employers saying, the people who come in straight from university, from college, are not ready for the employment space. And it's interesting to see, some of the data and research that you have shared. And, I'm just curious, and I like what you said about time to go beyond the classroom. But I'm wondering, now that we have the data that shows the beneficiaries have higher chances of getting employed once they get into, AIM programs and similar programs, why is there such a low uptake of such programs, by the female students? So I hope this is something that will come out in the Q&A when we do get there. And if any of our audience members has some feedback or thoughts around that, we will be really keen to hear from you as well. All right, it's time now for me to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Judith Apondo. Ms. Judith is the president of the Union of Kenya at the Soroptimist International, and she'll tell us a little bit more about the Soroptimist International. She serves as the Union of Kenya president. She's a clinical practitioner and a holder of a master's degree in public health and health services management, with more than 30 years of health and education related experiences in training institutions and communities. She draws most of her experience in humanitarian work from engagement with UNFPA, where she managed middle-level health workers trainings in areas of women issues in South Sudan, in Somalia and Ethiopia, Kenya Red Cross Society, where she served and retired as the principal of the training institutes, and so much more. I'd like to now welcome Judith Apondo to give us her remarks.
Thank you so much,
Terian, and for that elaborate introduction. Good afternoon, good morning, and to all the ladies and the gentlemen in the house. Okay, this word tongue twister, Soroptimist International, I think at the end when I get time, I'll just explain a little more about it. But straight to my presentation about this project, Youth Mentorship and Leadership Training. Our objectives for this particular project are: number one, to redefine what it means to be a leader while nurturing the passion, ideals, and energy of young women and fashioning reliable persons that can facilitate the process of national building and development. Secondly, we aim to empower girls aged between 13 and 17 in leadership by building and fostering their foundations in peace engagement, human rights, financial literacy, female mental health, entrepreneurship, and community connections. And I was really excited when Mary talked about AIM and the connectivity between employment and the realities in the class. We also aim to give young women information and tools to become responsible and accountable adults. It couldn't have been a better time to make young people become responsible and accountable at such times when the young people have become so irresponsible to the extent that they are actually destroying themselves. We equip young women with leadership skills and knowledge of initiating positive change in the communities. And we also impart knowledge on legal rights, issues concerning women, to enable them assist in decision making. There are so many myths, and in the way we socialize our children, there is a lot of beliefs that are carried on by girls of things that they can't do, and why boys must do them and men must get away with some things. And I think at an early stage, if they understand some of these legal issues and legal rights, it will really help to shape the world as a whole. The young people also acquire greater understanding on finances and entrepreneurship and community connections with the aim of poverty reduction. And I think we are talking around the same issues that affect young women and girls. Next slides, please. The theme of 2021 in this particular project was the road to equality, preparing girls to be leaders. And this was done in partnership with Willing Hearts, an organization in Canada, but was fully sponsored by Soroptimist International. The week-long training is held annually in Lugari Community Resource Center, and it is done every year since 2010. The target group is 13 to 17-year girls who are either in Form 1 or in Form 2. You don't pick. When we go out and source for the girls, we instruct the principals not to pick the girls who are necessarily in leadership, but just the girls that they think can benefit from this. And the speakers and presenters, all women experts in their fields, are invited from both local and international communities to inspire these young girls into action. And some of the topics include legal experts. The speakers are legal experts, law enforcement officers, medical professionals, financial experts, business executives, political leaders, community development pioneers, and agriculturalists. The speeches and presentations include role modeling and practical approaches. And in between, there is a lot of interaction and just bringing out talents in these girls, just to be able to stress to them that it's not always the books. There are other things that you can still do and excel in life. Next slide, please. Our key results, when we get the girls, the principals and the soroptimists in those particular counties monitor, and they continue to engage with the girls to monitor their progress. And we have seen that in many ways, these girls are leaders in their own ways. And each year when they come for training, they elect 2 girls, depending on the qualities that have been exhibited by the particular girls. We get 2 girls of that particular year. And these 2 girls are invited back in every training, and they come back and share their experiences of what they are doing, what the training did to them that made them be where they are now. And they are all leaders in different ways, and they are doing several things in the communities. I had a lot of videos that could not be contained in this short presentation of these girls doing a lot of things in the communities where they come. And in that photo that you can see on that slide, they are being taught how to plant vegetables in very small areas. And when they get out, the ones we have visited, many of them are practicing all sorts of things that are very, very helpful to the communities from where they come. So those are just some of their stories and lessons that we have learned. Some of the biases from the stories of these girls in our society can actually be tackled by getting girls to believe in themselves at a very, very early stage as young women, and to know that they can be able to take part in many and decision making and participate in a lot of things that their brothers, their uncles are doing. And this will also and have made the male counterparts in their families and even in their communities acknowledge them not only as sisters and females, but useful persons with special qualities that need to be incorporated in decision making in the family and in the community levels. And when we talk about human rights to them and the women's rights, we consider as if we know that females are also humans, then I think the narrative that we are only focusing on women's rights takes away the bigger picture, because if we are human, then we should be looked at in that context. So those are some of the lessons that we have learned, and it is from these girls that when they get out there, they are able to portray some of what and demystify some of the issues and areas that only men have excelled. Some of those pictures just show the girls in last year. And I think, next slide, please. Okay, in summary, I think the project aims to enhance the passions and the ideals and the energy in young women to make a difference in their communities and the world as a whole. Thank you so much. About Soroptimist International, Soroptimist started in 1921 in California, America. In Kenya, we have 13 clubs. And the first club was registered in 1979. So we have actually been in existence for the last 43 years, working basically and mainly with the women and girls in the communities in different areas, education and environment, women empowerment. When we do our proposals, you find that they impact the family as a whole, but we have a bias on women and young girls. Thank you so much. I'm really excited that we are learning so much. And I'm also finding out that there's so much that we are doing.
Judith, we seem to be losing you.
That is around the world. For that, I think it's my phone. It was ringing and I've just put it off. I don't know at what particular point you lost me, Terian.
We lost you maybe about 30, 40 seconds ago.
Ah, okay. I think I was just explaining about our projects in Soroptimist International, We work through the clubs, 13 in number in Kenya, and the projects we implement in the areas of education, environment, women empowerment, gender-based violence. And there are projects that actually benefit the whole family, but we have a bias towards women in our projects. Thank you so much. Back to you, Terian.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pondo, for your thoughts. And I really like what you've said about preparing girls early, and the fact that you're, working with girls who are not in their tertiary level yet, but are still in high school. And also what you said about not just selecting the leaders, because that's what we naturally do. When an opportunity comes along, for some reason, we always pick those who are already standing out. So it is important for us to look at a girl as a girl, a girl who has an opportunity to succeed, and also what then this exposure will do for her within the family setup and in decision making. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for challenging us to begin to think in that direction as well. So I would now like to welcome our final speaker before we get into the breakout sessions. And our speaker is Ms. Anne Karemi. Anne Karemi is the Country Director, East Africa at Timeless Women of Wonder Africa, that's TWOW. Ms. Anne is a results-driven professional who holds a Bachelor of Arts degree. She has over 20 years experience in the energy sector, and her passion in oil and gas as well as renewable energy has seen her maintain a credible rapport with various stakeholders in the sector. Ms. Anne is a visionary leader who is passionate about changing the narrative. Her commitment and desire to see the emotional, economical, spiritual, social, educational, and occupational empowerment of women and youth. She's strongly committed to the TWOW pillars and what they stand for in the pursuit of creating opportunities, unlocking potential, and embracing relevance both in Kenya and across Africa. And she says we should no longer struggle to find the confidence to pursue our purpose. Karibu sana, Anne, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Terian. Maybe we can move on, but before we start, I'd like to just talk about TWOW. TWOW's main mission is to empower women, youth, and SMEs to optimize their potential and social economic transformation for Africa through collaborative partnerships. So you can imagine how exciting it is for us to be here and listening to the previous speakers. Like, there's so much we can do together. So it's very exciting, and I'll mention some of the things that I've seen that we can matter with. We've embarked on very many initiatives and programs, but in the interest of this session today, I'll focus on an initiative that we've called Unveiling Her Star. Unveiling Her Star usually mainly focuses on skilling in non-conventional or traditional sectors. We have women in construction, women in manufacture, women in energy, women in agriculture. Those are still in the pipeline. But for today, we will talk about women in construction. And this one, we focused on, let's go back, okay. It was skilling, building for women and girls, of course, as I said, in non-traditional sectors. Of course, now bleeding towards economic empowerment and linking them to economy and labor force. Of course, we focused on their life skills and well-being. We also, gave them some literacy on environment sustainability. And of course, behind the scenes, we are working now on community-driven policy formulation and alignment. Slide, please. Of course, now there had to be some context behind this. As we know, women form more than 50% of Africa's and Kenya's population. And of course, it's unfortunate that 80% of Africans live below the poverty line, most of these being women and children, And so you find that women are so vulnerable and they're exposed to vices such as gender-based violence, sex for money, unplanned pregnancies and early marriages. And we're so poor, and families are faced with challenges, meeting just the basic needs such as food, clothing, just the basic needs, health services, shelter, and education. So you find that now at TWOW, we carved a niche for its intervention for economic empowerment for women in these sectors for the following reasons. You find that now the infrastructure, the extractive, energy, blue economy, All these opportunities are there, but unfortunately, unless these women are exposed to this, these sectors, they will never know about them. You find that there's so many just selling vegetables on the streets. Most of them believing that the only thing can do is wash clothes, in households and all that stuff. And because of the kind of work that they do, the ones I've mentioned, you find that now the income is at the lowest, about $8.5 to $15 per day. That's 150 shillings per day. So we kind of had to open them up to this creativity and showing them that they can, be able to solve their problems, and also transform their immediate environments, okay? So the kind of opportunities for women to bring diversity into the sectors, thereby increasing and improving services, deliver, safe buildings, quality of work, and improved standards in these sectors. During, next slide, please. During the sessions, we find that women were so keen in learning, and we worked with the kind of approach used was adult learning, because you find that the women were training were between a bit over 18 years and above, right? And we focused on practical life skills and support, technical know-how. We were working with technical experts in the industries, of course, also working with the Ministry of Gender, and then we worked with women on the ground, because we found that now at that time there was a lot of language barriers, but it was all community-based. And the sessions were very interactive and theoretical. These women were asking questions, very eager to learn. So it was a very interesting session in the pilot programs that we did. And of course, now the implementation period for these sessions was, between 8 to 16 weeks, from the period of introduction, the theory part, the practice, and up to graduation. So you find that now those sessions were taking 8 to 16 weeks. Of course, the target groups, as I've said, was between 18 years and above, including people living with disabilities and other categories. Next slide. Okay, our pilot counties were Nairobi and Kiambu counties. Those are the ones we started with. That was about in 2015, 2016. Of course, our vision is to scale it upwards and maybe cover the whole 47 counties. But for now, what we have in the pipeline and what we are working with 11 counties right now. So we'll continue scaling. And of course, our vision is to ensure that, we've covered all the 47 counties, and of course, working with the governments on the ground. And of course, as I said before, the program components are transforming mindsets, whereby we are telling these women, you can do what a man can do. You can be a carpenter, you can paint, masonry, you can recycle stuff. So that now women don't feel that they just have to stay in the house or, just become mamambogas, and stuff like things. Of course, now the life skills enablement, and then of course, financial literacy. You find that most women don't know how to save. They don't have bank accounts, teaching them how to, to leverage on M-Pesa and, and all that stuff, and circles and what have you. Another thing that we really focused on was the mental and overall health and well-being of these women, because you cannot, for you to be able to, derive the best, the optimum from these women, if they're not mentally okay, then this does not work. So what we do now, we also focus on their mental health and the overall health and well-being. As I said before, we were working with the technical experts in various fields. Of course, now because, as I said before, masonry, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, recycling, repurposing, painting, tiling, roofing. And I can tell you, these women were so excited. These are fields that were so far-fetched, where they were concerned. And you can imagine for a woman in Kibera, you're telling her, I can build. She's there working with a stone, painting, carpentry. She comes and tells you, look, I made this chair, and it just builds their confidence. It was very exciting to see the kind of things that they were doing. And of course, now through our various partnerships, we're able to, assimilate them into the economy and get them jobs in the marketplace. Some of our partners, such as National Construction Authority, so at least they were able to be integrated into society and to their work. Next slide, please. Yes, so in the two counties that I've mentioned, we were able to train and deploy 30,000 women. This was in Kibra, in Nairobi, and of course, Kiambu County. And of course, there's a picture there. You see these women very excited, after their graduation in their overalls. I've talked about the approaches that we use, the mindset transformation, life skills that I've mentioned that, and assimilation to industry. Next slide, please. Yes, we may not be perfect at collecting data and research, but I think from the sessions that we had, we were just able to just pick up some data that can help us now in the next phase. And as you can see from the pie charts, these are some of the trainings that the women undertook: plumbing, masonry, electrical works, carpentry, recycling. This is now picking plastic things and making some beautiful house ornaments from them. We had women, doing tiling on top of roofs. So this is the most unconventional, sectors, but that these women embarked on. It was a very successful thing, and that is what we had. So during this period, of course, the key findings were that age doesn't matter. I think the best testimonial we had was from an 84-year-old woman who wanted to do mystery. And I remember she was being asked, are you going to build, or what is going to happen? And she said she wants to be the foreman. She wants to be the supervisor, ensuring that the building is up to standard. So that was very, very inspiring for us. So we had girls, of course, from 18 to 84 years old. The women were so passionate about coming to learn. It's just that lacking that opportunity. We find that there are those even who came with their children, putting them somewhere there, and even those with disability, and they never missed that chance. And it was very exciting to see, like, what is lacking is just that opportunity to just come and learn. Of course, women have a very keen attention to detail. They were very attentive, asking questions, following instructions, and this was very positive and encouraging for us. And that's why we actually want to replicate it, because it was our success in the 2 counties that I spoke about. Of course, now they were sensitive to the need of regulation and safety. Unfortunately, sometimes, and when on this forum, I'm very sorry, like with the people who are in construction, you find that they kind of forget to follow the rules. But these women were very keen. In fact, the ones who didn't have helmets were asking for helmets. Where are my gloves? And all that stuff. So that at least they followed through to that. Of course, we had some setbacks. Most of the overalls we got, definitely for the big-bodied women, you find that they were not fitting. It was just a challenge, and this is something that we are looking into addressing, because most of the clothing and kits were not designed, they're not designed for women bodies. So those are some of the hiccups that we were getting. Of course, there was the issues of certification and licensing for women, and some of the challenges we were having. And I think I can attest even on this table, if a painter came to your house and she's a lady, you will be like, are you sure you can paint? Or if a woman went to knock outside a construction site, chances are the men will be given, the first priority. So those are some of the challenges we're having in terms of assimilation, into the workforce, but we're working with the necessary bodies to ensure that this issue is addressed. Next slide, please. Yes, so of course now, as I conclude, there's now have to think of gender sensitivity in construction and non-traditional sectors. What's your name, Sally? I'm very happy that from Kenya Association of Manufacturers, I think one of the next programs you have with women in manufacturing, we'd be very interested to see how we can collaborate in that field. Of course, now in terms of licensing and certification, we are working with the bodies, as I said, to ensure that this is seamless and flawless. And of course, now through the same bodies, we want to make sure that there's 30% Public Procurement Act in Kenya, where now the women are also, involved. There's a video here, which I don't think we'll be able to show, but it shows some testimonials of these very excited women, just happy that they'll be able to integrate into society, and they're not stuck by the roadside, just selling their vegetables and what have you. I think that was the last one. But for me, in conclusion, I would say that it's very exciting for us to be here. I know our founder and CEO is listening in, and I think all the speakers who have spoken before, there's so much that we can do together. In fact, I was so excited with the STEM program, the Judith working with the ages of 13 and 17. Unfortunately, when you hear about the youth, people think about 18 and above. So we should start from a younger age, and this is very exciting. The mentorship programs with the youth, Mary Mwangi, we have youth programs that we are working on, and those are areas we can collaborate with, Alex. I mean, there are so many things like with the youth and unwanted pregnancies. That is something that is also in the pipeline in our programs. So I'm seeing so many opportunities for collaboration, and I'm very excited for, the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I've really enjoyed listening to your conversation. And, coming to the end of it, when you spoke about the 84-year-old woman who wanted to be a mason or supervisor, I mean, you're right, age doesn't matter. And also, we all know that women are more, we are keen to detail. We follow process, we follow procedures. So it was incredible to see that, this is some of the outcomes you've seen. And I've also, of course, taken note of the last mile challenge that you mentioned. And my take is that, just listening to all the presenters we've had this afternoon, it's all about building a funnel of talent that cannot be ignored, even in this sector, such as construction, manufacturing, which we heard about earlier from Sally of CAM. So thank you so much, Anne. And now we're ready to get into the breakout sessions. We're doing quite well on time. I think we're behind by just about 6 minutes, which is great. So we will be able to now move into our breakout sessions. I want to introduce our moderators for the breakout sessions first, and then we'll quickly move into the sessions. We will have 2 different sessions. The first session, which will be moderated by Dr. Fanis Wangila, and I'll introduce her in a moment. We'll be looking at what are the experiences learned in the public sector that Kenya can adopt. And Ms. Nyakan June, who's the CEO and founder of Timeless Women of Wonder, Anne has just mentioned that she's in the room and she's listening. She will be moderating the second breakout session. What are the experiences learned in the private sector that Kenya can adopt? So to our audience, feel free to pick one of the breakout sessions, which will be set up immediately. I introduce our panelists and our moderators. And immediately we're done at about 4:35, 4:40 thereabout. We will all come back into this room and hear the feedback from the breakout sessions. I'd like to request those of you whose microphones are on, please try and mute them. For now, I would like to now introduce our our moderators for the next session. And I'll start with Dr. Wangila Fanisfega. She is the Director of Gender and Development and a Senior Lecturer of Analytical Chemistry at the University of Kabianga. Fanis is an experienced and self-motivated analytical chemist and gender and development activist and implementer. She has extensive knowledge in academia, in research, in development management, and supervision of graduate students for capacity building. Fanis has done extensive research in the field of chemistry and in recent years in gender. She holds a PhD in chemistry from the Egerton University, a master's from the same institution, and a bachelor's in education from Kenyatta University. She has published 16 papers in revered journals, presented various papers in conferences, among other functions. I'd also like to introduce our second moderator, or our moderator for the second breakout session, founder and CEO of Timeless Women of Wonder, Ms. June Nyakan. She's the global CEO of TWOW and host of the global annual Timeless conferences. She's an international consultant, a professional strategist, a strong negotiator, a partnerships developer, business process re-engineer, and transformational change expert. Ms. Nyakan is an impactful motivational speaker, a business efficiency solutions person who has a track record of successfully transforming people and organizations for efficiency and productivity in innovative ways. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are our breakout session moderators. And right about now, our team will be setting up the breakaways. If you go down to the bottom of your of your screen, you will be able to see a tab written breakout rooms. And once you click on it, you'll be able to join 1, the private sector experiences, or 2, the public sector experiences. So I'll give you some time now to get into the breakout sessions. Feel free to pick any of the 2. You could go down to the tab that shows participants chat, share screen record. You'll find a tab written breakout rooms. Pick either the private sector experiences or the public sector experiences. All right, I see we're about 45 of us, so we can kick off. I would like to invite the moderators to give us some feedback on the two sessions that you have moderated, and I'd like to start with Ms. June Nyakan. June is the founder and CEO of the Timeless Women of Wonder. Ms. Nyakan, over to you. Just give us some feedback. What was the conversation like? What were some of the key takeouts? How engaging was it? And it's good to see you, Ms. Nyakan.
Thank you so much, Terianne, and thank you to the WE community of practice and the organizers for this great afternoon. Our session, I see Lewin smiling very heartily, and the members of our breakout, they'll agree with me. We didn't have enough time, but it was good to begin our very key conversations. It was interactive, very eye-opening and enlightening, right? We were focusing on our private sector perspective on skills building and what can be done. Obviously, we discussed some of the challenges and opportunities that we have, and some of the things that we already have that we can leverage on. One of the things that I think we were able to pick and was very enlightening for everybody, including myself, was to be able to leverage on some of the existing platforms so that we can act as one voice, right? And platforms such as the National Advocacy Coalition, some of you who are not on our breakout, be enlightened. There is a National Advocacy Coalition platform which would be able to leverage all our voices and the things we want to push in terms of policy. Platforms such as what the WE Corp has created, are things that we can continue to leverage on because, obviously this afternoon is benefiting all of us because we're already consolidating our ideas, our learning, and our outcomes to drive common agenda. We also noted the benefit of cross-stakeholder collaboration. I think when we were listening to the evidence-based data and research that's been done by those who are in our breakout rooms, being able to collaborate, private sector, public sector, research institutions, academia, was resulting in great impact. We had the CCGD that's already collaborated with UN, okay, and some other players to be doing some interventions on both research and execution on cross-border trade for women. We've got what KU is doing, with women mentorship, data, research, and influencing a couple of things. The different players were just, and we also challenged ourselves to innovate because it's not just about challenge, it's also innovating. What can we do? What can we enhance? And I'm happy that Alex from Kidogo and our team took some challenges, to innovate based on some feedbacks that we gave. But as you can see, if you gave us about maybe 10 more minutes, we could have had 3 big other additional outcomes, but it was very, very insightful. Bridging the gap between policy and research and programmatic aspects, that's very critical. So that we have programs on the ground informing data. We don't just have desktop data, but just also programmatic evidence-based, feeding into policy and research to be able then to influence interventions and policy and laws, right? So, it was good. I think our take home is a couple of things, one of which in summary is the power of collaboration. That's going to truly increase the impact. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity. And I think we all have benefited today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nyakan, for your feedback. Dr. Fanis Wangila Feather, please take the mic and tell us what was the experience like, what are some of the takeouts from your session, which looked at the experiences in the public sector. Dr. Wangila?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, Terianne. Thank you, members of public sector. We actually looked at what experiences we could learn from the public sector and what Kenya can adopt. And I'm happy to hear what June has said. Some of those issues were also observed in the other section where we were looking at the public sector. Now, one of them that came out very strongly is that Kenya needs to look at how we are going to socialize the young girls and women so that this can bring out, a woman who knows that they have a right to whatever decisions they're making, even at house level, even at the community level. That we have quite a lot of myth surrounding the girl child that limits them even from progression. So I think that is one lesson that we are actually picking out that Kenya can adopt. Then number two, these training, research, and mentorship programs that are coming up, we have realized from the previous presenters, you will know, I mean, you realize the young people have quite a lot of energy. And when we invest in them, actually they change, they transform the nation. So I think the government is actually supposed to invest more, even for the soft skills, other than just looking at the academia part of it. I think that came out so strongly, the investment in soft skills. Then, of course, we also had a member also contributing towards the ethical practices within our nation. And of course, when you look at the public sector, quite a lot is actually on paper, but less is implemented. So the policies that come with implementation is what Kenya needs to look at. How do we carry forth whatever policies that have come about, how the implementation aspect needs to be undertaken? I think that came out very, very strongly in all our discussions. Then there was a member who actually, or rather the members also considered the fact that the graduates that we are producing from our universities or from our higher education institutions does not match the economy of the country. And one issue that came out so strongly is the issue of the nurses. Actually, there's a lot of export of human capital in terms of the health, I mean, from the health sector. So what is this that Kenya can collaborate on so that we reduce a loss of the best, what I can call the cream part of it? Because if we have to export these people out of the human capital, definitely it comes with a, a strength in what you have, that at the end of it all, we lose the cream, and what probably we are remaining with is, things that we are asking ourselves. We have the graduates, but they're not performing in the job market. So I think that is one thing that came out. And so the issue of collaborations also came up. And one thing that is very strong here, we have seen private sectors performing. And so the question was, how do we have implementations? How do we have achievements in the private sector and not in the public sector? So there is need to collaborate between the private, public, those partnerships, but with implementation that bring out strong indicators of performance. Then I think one member also commented on progression as far as mentorship programs is concerned, so that we start at this early age. Then who takes over? So how can we bridge this gap between young women and girls mentorship and mentorship when they're even over 18, 20, and so much so forth? I think that gap is one thing that the government can borrow so that we can run with in Kenya. And then, of course, at that point, then we realized there is also, we were reminded of the policy on basic education in Kenya. But yes, there's basic education policy, but how much implementation goes with it? I think those were the major issues that really came out. Thank you very much, and back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Wangila. I see we've got a question or two which I would like to pose to you. The first one is from Janet Kiragu. She says she's in a place where the internet is not great, so she's requested me to ask on her behalf. I wish to ask, can any of our moderators, hosts or attendees know how women in science wishing to pursue postgraduate, maybe postgraduate, to advance our careers in online courses, access funds for tuition? Example, student financing for women, loans, or scholarship. This is because many countries do not allow one to do full-time courses while traveling with a dependent.
I lost you a bit. Maybe you can just refresh it again.
So Jane is asking about how she would be able to attend a career, to get a postgraduate degree online, because many countries do not allow one to do full-time courses while traveling with a dependent.
Okay. You asking, I respond, or you're asking all of us, maybe?
If no,
Yeah,
I'd like you
you
to respond if possible.
Yeah, Terian, thank you. And we mentioned something about STEM, that is science, technology, mathematics, and yeah. And one thing is very true, that they are graduates or they are not graduates. But this is one case where somebody is asking about the postgraduate, meaning they have already done their undergraduates and they would wish to progress. There are quite a lot of funding opportunities out there, and I'm sure they can be able to get this funding. Of course, one of them is NACOSTI. NACOSTI grants funds, and this can be done. I know there are so many programs out there that people can do online. I have been a witness to this, and quite a number of students have done this. So I don't think it is such a challenge. However, when it comes to now the research part, they are done from within your mother country. And of course, you don't then need to travel, right? So we have those exchange programs, and they are there. They are being done from all over. So you only need to Google in, log in. There is, we have, for example, I'm a vice chair, I'm a vice secretary of the Organization for Women in Science in Developing Countries. Yeah, and we have scholarships there. I always see there are grants there, and you need not, travel. You can have a sandwich program, probably between, one country and the other, or they even do it from within the country. So really, I don't see why somebody must not progress just because they have to travel with a dependent. I have been a witness. I have done my studies within Kenya, and I have excelled. Thank you. Of course, there are many funding organizations. If we Google, we can get this. There is, that's just one example, but there are many. Thank you. I hope I've answered.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wengila. So I see that we've got some good feedback. Those of you who may not have asked your questions yet, please feel free to do so. We've got a few, maybe 2-3 minutes to go. So if you do have a question you'd like to ask, please feel free to leave that on the Q&A tab. I see Calvin Chepsiro, you say for Collaborative Center for Gender and Development, we've partnered with UN WeHub to empower cross-border women by establishing a childcare center. Currently, we have a pilot childcare center, which I believe government can utilize in promoting He also says, I fully agree on this idea of working collaboratively towards the agenda of empowering women. I also see that there's a lot of collaboration going on. So if you do feel that you'd like to share your contact or who you'd like to collaborate with, please leave that on the comment section. Also for the earlier speakers, if you'd like to say something, please raise your hand. I'll be able to see you, and then you can share a view or feedback or a takeout from today's event. Do we have any more questions? All right, I suppose in the absence of questions, I'd like to move on to the next and final part of our program this evening. I'd like to invite Mr. Crispin Afifu. Crispin will give us an update of the WeCop and as well as the next steps. Crispin is the Gender and Women Economic Empowerment Specialist at ICRW Africa. Crispin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Terry. And next slide, please. So as we've come to almost to the end of this discussion, there are a few things that we want to do as a WeCop, and one of these, of course, is to ensure that we establish concrete technical working groups. And some of you already responded to the survey tool that went around, and we now know at least what most of you are doing within the space of women's economic empowerment. And so we will, the website is up, which you're going to see in a short while. And from Monday, we shall have a link whereby you will be able to click on it and belong to, and of course, get into the kind of groups, or at least the technical working groups, which are relevant to the kind of work you're doing, of course, which means that you can belong to multiple groups. Once we've known who has belonged to which group, we'll be able then to get back to you and establish the leads who are going to be the leaders of each of the technical working groups. And out of those leads, we'll be able to establish the steering committee. The next thing that we're going to do, and you'll be able to see those updates coming your way, is that again, most of us responded to the capacity needs. And so there are areas, as you can see on your screen, that are different partners would want their technical capacities be developed on. And we have those that are going to do exactly that. So we will be concentrating on gender mainstreaming and inclusion. We will be looking into the best practices, especially for data security, storage, and management. We'll also be looking at how best to influence policy. As you've rightly said, one of our partners, ActionAid, is leading the Advocacy Coalition, where we also, most of us also being members there. We will be enhancing our evidence synthesis. So even out of this discussion or presentation have been made today, we will be able to synthesize that which you've already given, and we will share the same with you. And of course, all the many other things you're seeing over on the screen, including data visualization. Next slide, please. So in this next slide, again, just to continue, we will also help us as members of the various technical working groups to identify the learning themes, which of course will help us to develop the critical questions and evidence gaps for these subthematic areas that we're looking at. And eventually, of course, we will have sort of more concerted efforts in terms of generating the right evidence moving forward. We would also be able to have more webinars as we move on and other learning series like this one. So be on the lookout. We will be communicating to you next time when we have the next quarterly meeting or the next webinar or the next learning series, which we will share a clear calendar. You'll be able to see all that. Lastly, is most of us have been able to share their logos. I shared this earlier. You see some logos have sort of, they appear twice. This is just placeholders. We are 52 members of the community of practice, at least as of now. So all we need from us is share your logos, and we shall be able to have one banner that we will make first use of next week on 16th during the CSW event, which will be a side event, and all of you are invited, and we shall have our banner right there. So allow me to show you how the website is going to look like. And stop sharing this. Yeah, so this is how our website is looking like at the moment, and it's officially launched today. Be free to interact with it as much as you can. So this is who we are, Women's Economic Empowerment Community of Practice. This is our site, and this site talks more about who we are. It talks about the kind of partners that we have all over here and what you're going to do. And of course, they are pointed. Each partner, for example, if I click on the Kenyatta University, it will point us to the KU we have and all other activities that you do. So these are all active sites. So each member, so this, remember we said we're all equal members. This is our platform. This is where we need to engage as we move on. So every partner here, whenever someone comes onto the site and wants to know more about, for example, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, just click there and it will take him or her there. We also have another tab, which is more about research. And at this point, you can be able to to check on which, if you want to know what's happening where, for example, you can come to this place and you search by county, for instance, by a member. If you want to select from academia, it will come up. Then you go to the University of Nairobi or Kenyatta University, and it will take you there. And of course, if you want to check on which thematic area you would want, and of course, this will help you either to submit a resource, which we have so many types of resources that we're going to share moving on. So we have picked from some of the resources that you've done in different ways. And so some of them are still placeholders. As we move on, we are going to change all this with the actual data as we receive it from you, the actual materials as we receive from you, and we will ensure that there is proper citations of whatever that you have put across. Also, lastly, we have, as I said earlier, the thematic working groups, which are into all these areas: education, care, health, financial inclusion, gender-based violence. So when you eventually get to sign in to one of the thematic working groups, we will be able to, any person who's coming to the site will be able to click on there and see who belongs to which the TWG, and of course what they exactly doing, and engage with them. So even the resources that we have, including what the presentation that you've just done, they're already uploaded on the site. So I would encourage us that moving on, you can down at the screen here, as you can see, you can come and of course register for alerts, register for the quarterly bulletin, register for events, and the calendar of events will be at your disposal. You'll be able to look at what's coming up when it's coming up. So remember, and last thing I would say here is that on the left side, on the right corner here, there is a green tab. When you click on it, it will be able to ask you to fill in this form so that then you're able to, this is not refreshed. So it will be able to ask you, or at least to provide the feedback on what exactly you want us to improve on different aspects of this website, and that will be good for us moving forward. Yeah, so that will help us and you be in a position whereby we can easily amend or edit or change anything that you don't like on the website, because we want to make it as convenient as possible for all of us moving forward. So for today's event, let me just check it. Where is it at? Let me push all these things down. And here, when you come to the community of practice, we come to the media. Are you seeing me there? Yes. Are you seeing the videos? Yes, here it is. So members, once you're done with this, you just click on the website, you go to the media, and on that portal, you'll be able to see the week of meeting today, the slide deck that has just been presented. It's already right here. The speaker profiles are right there. And of course, the agenda that we've just discussed. So everything will be prompt as we move on, and we will be acknowledging you as this is all your work. So together, we will make this work. Thank you so much. Back to you, Terry. You're mute.
Yeah, can't unmute.
Thank you so much, Crispin, for not only closing this for us, but putting together such a timely and necessary conversation. And with that, we've come to the end of our conversation this evening. I'd like to thank each and everyone that took part in the conversation, not only within the rooms here, but also on social media. I want to thank all the speakers for today: Alex Dai, Sally Kahyu, John Ocheng, Mary Mwangi, Judith Opondo, and Karimi, and of course our moderators for the breakout sessions, Dr. Wangila and Ms. Nyakan. I suppose it has been quite amazing. We have closed bang on time, just over by about 10 minutes. So I'd like to thank all our speakers for keeping us within the scheduled time. So with that, I want to wish you all a very good evening. Remember to check out the website that has been shared by Crispin. I'm sure it will also be shared on the ICRW social media handles in case you have not seen it yet, or I see Crispin is copying it. I guess he'll put it on the chat so that you're able to take that and have a look. Well, thank you so much to Crispin and your team for putting this together. I want to say asante and have a wonderful evening. Once again, my name is Terian Chibet, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be part of this conversation. Asante and God bless.